Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Fighter Pilot's Guide to Living. This is the fourth installment following the naval career of Commander Chip King, call sign Biff. And we are picking up right after Biff left command of the F-213 following their very successful tour in Afghanistan, supporting the ODAs and Team Alpha who were on the ground there in October of 2001. Right now, we're picking up as Biff is about to head back to DC, and we'll follow the end of his naval career and his big takeaways, and I hope you enjoy.
Change of command December. What did you do after you left?
Went to the Pentagon.
Okay.
It's
That
funny
had to
'cause
be like a very interesting transition to like go from
Yeah.
a combat
Yeah,
cruise and then go right into the.
What's that like?
When Beth, when you contacted me and I started thinking about my career, and I was like, I was pretty hard headed. I didn't really listen to anybody. All the advice that everybody gave me, like my skipper out of VF-84 was like, Biff, you got to go to the rag. You got to go to the rag. And he was right. He was absolutely right. But I wanted to be an adversary pilot. I wanted to be single seat. I wanted to, and so I went to Key West. And then, after my department head tour, was like, you got to go to DC. You got to do joint. It's like, I want to fly. It's really, they hadn't figured it out yet that it's really, not that I'm great at it, but it's the only thing I was good at. I'm not a paperwork guy. I was very fortunate that I had a group of guys who, enjoyed working with me I surround yourself with good people. You get the hell out of the way. You just tell them what your goal is and let them, tell you how they're going to achieve it. And you give them a little steering here and there and buy them a drink occasionally, and it usually turns out pretty well.
That's great advice.
I love it.
But again, if I had gone to the rag, I might have been, more successful as a senior officer. But again, I didn't plan on staying beyond 20. The only job I ever wanted in my entire career, I wanted to be the CO of the squadron. Every time I sat in the back of the ready room as a young officer and I looked up, that guy was bigger than life to me. Harry Stanbridge, just an amazing leader. Rocky Deal, great guy, amazing leader. Yeah.
And you did get to it, like the timing that you got to do that is just incredible.
Timing is everything.
Timing is everything.
Navy. And my timing was very good. Very fortunate.
So what type of stuff were you working on the Pentagon? Was it just how many years were you there? 2 or?
No, well,
did they kick you out like they did with the Congressional
okay,
liaison?
I'm sorry. Here's where I was going with this. So I told you I had all this great advice from wonderful people who genuinely had my best interest at heart. So I get to the Pentagon, and I think I'm in N6, and I'm asked to go talk to my boss was Mike Mullen at the time, and then the vice CNO. So I go to Mullins and he tells me, he goes, we really appreciate, you had a great tour. We'd like you to stay in the Navy. I told the CAG I was leaving. So, we played that game on orders that I had already talked to them about orders when I hadn't, because I had planned on leaving all along. So they sent me to Washington. Again, I'm with Mullins, and he's telling me, he goes, Biff, we'd like to keep you, and I said, well, sir, I left with a 1 of 1. I'm not sure that's not going to do anything for me. The competitive ticket that I got was a 2 of like 8 or whatever. And a 2 usually meant that you go drive a ship. And that's not me. I know my limitations, and I don't have that kind of engineering background. And while I did all the conning underway and I got all the checks, I knew that wasn't something I wanted to do. If I could go be a CAG and keep flying, that was an option. But as a number 2 or 3 guy, you weren't going to that wasn't going to be your path. So I told him, I said, I appreciate it, Admiral Mullins, but you know, where who knows where you'll be when the board comes up for the selection process. And of course, he ends up being the chief of naval operations. And of course, I mean, it's just perfect because it was the exact same thing with Rocky Deal and Fozzie Miller, these guys trying to, help me. And I just went my own way.
Yeah.
But I kid, but I don't think I'd do it any differently. So.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
then,
all those things have turned you into things that you've loved, right? I mean,
Right.
like what you're doing
Yeah.
now is a love thing, and
Yeah.
if you had taken that advice, maybe you would have hated it, right? Maybe.
Well, I'm pretty sure I would have. I know I'm a lot better in a moving vehicle, than I am in sitting behind a desk. So
so how was the transition for you? So, I mean, what was your stint in the Pentagon? Just
less than a year.
less than a year.
I
So
think
you
it was
go
like
from a
6
combat
months.
cruise,
Yeah. Well, they knew
6 months in the
after,
Pentagon, and then like transition to civilian life.
after I talked to Mullins, he knew, I wasn't going to stay.
Okay.
And I actually went back down and got stashed at Fighter Wing for
Okay.
my remaining, 3 to 6 months. I was, after I left command, it was less than a year before I was out of the Navy, and I transitioned to my next career.
Did you get
Did
to fly
you?
at all at Fighter Wing, or was that
No,
just
no,
stash job and not okay? I'm
no.
I'm
Like,
I wish,
okay.
but I was somewhat out of the good graces of, because I told everybody I didn't want to stay, and
no.
they some people were happy, some people weren't. So
Did you find it difficult, the transition, or
no,
was it you
no,
kind of made the mind up, and did you already have things lined up, or how long did that take to kind of figure out that next job and then
no.
move?
I walked out of. In fact, I was very fortunate. All the what do they call the leave that you have? I can't
Terminal,
remember.
yeah, terminal
Terminal
leave.
leave. I had 3 months of terminal leave, but I had actually didn't use any of my. I ended up working in my current position while I was still getting not officially out of the Navy. My retirement date was January 2003. Yeah,
Okay.
January 1st, 2003.
Hmm.
And I actually I started the job I'm in now. I think it was in September. So, I was double dipping.
Yeah.
I was doing phone muster, and if I had to be there, I could, I was there. But they, they were very gracious, very. So
That's awesome.
Yeah,
yeah,
you've been in this job as long as you were,
longer, yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
25 years.
Do you think you'll ever stop doing it, or do you think you will just do it because you love it?
Probably at some point. It was my time in the Navy was selfish in some respects. I raising a family. It's a lot of time away from my young kids, and of course I often kid that that's why they're so well adjusted, is because I spent 7 years out of the 21 years I was in the Navy, just under 21 years I was in the Navy away. So thankfully my wife raised them and she did well. So
Oh my goodness.
Uh,
What do you think are the biggest lessons? I think that we always come back to this at the end of the idea of what does aviation teach you about how to live your life? What have you learned from flying about what life, how you like to exist on this planet, basically? That got real deep real fast.
yeah.
yeah, it did get. Beth, it did get a little deep. We'd have
I
to
get
be
it.
at the bar with
I
a
got,
couple drinks right
I
now.
know, right? We need to be at the O Club with
Yes.
It taught me to really live every day like it's my last. It's been and what's important. Your family is the most important thing. Um, I don't know. I thank my lucky stars, and think about all the people that didn't come home. I came home, and I mean, I've got a list of. I went through it the other day, and I just can't. A lot of people didn't come home. And their families are. Yeah, they paid the ultimate price.
Yeah,
It's
that's well
tough.
said. And that's the whole point we're doing. That's why we're here, right? Is to
Yeah.
get these
Right.
stories and find the
It
people who
is. It's a
inspired, and
circle.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and we keep talking about them. They're not gone then. So
Yep. And that's
Yeah.
if you would love, like, I'd love it if you want to tell any stories about any of them that you
yeah,
remember,
Well,
especially, I know
my,
it's like
my,
a real emotional ask right now, too.
I do. I do have. One of the. We lost the whale. I think we talked about it in the
that's right.
earlier segment.
Yeah,
And those guys, tragically, didn't come home from cruise. But on that cruise in the squadron VF-84, there was a guy named Fred Dillingham, and he was a senior chief who went through and was commissioned and became an officer and went through the Rio program. He was at the RAG, and he flew with a LSO cross trained student, who was, I think it was an A6 guy who had gotten a orientation NATOP squall in the F-14. And of course, he's an A6 guy. So what does he want to do? He wants to do a supersonic run, right? And he's off the coast of North Carolina, down in the where the tax ranges are, but he's just off the coast, but far enough off the coast because it's a supersonic run. He's in the warning areas, and he's the airplane had an afterburner liner burn through, and it went into the actuator on the horizontal stab, and the horizontal stabs are the size of an A4 wing. And that thing went hard over, and the airplane just disintegrated. And people on the beach said that it looked like a shooting star, but it was daytime. And you know, Fred Dillingham was just a salt of the earth. He's an enlisted guy who came up through the ranks, and he was lost that day, as well as the pilot. Very, very sad though. One-time ride for this kid. The A6 guy, and unfortunately, it was a fatal ride. I lost a good friend, Carol LaFawn, probably one of the best aviators I've ever known in my life. I've been blessed. I've been trained by him. I've flown with, a lot of great aviators. Snort was a big influence and mentor. Um, but Carol was a very talented individual, and he was part of a team that was, after he left the service, he was ATAC, and he flew.
it was a
It
kefir,
was
right?
the Hafir, yeah.
Yeah,
And they're out at Fallon, and the weather's crap. And the Hornet guys declined to do a weather recce, but Carroll's a guy who really liked to fly. Who I'm that guy too. I really like to fly, and I'll do it. So he goes out and does a weather recce in a Kafir, comes back, and the airfield's below minimums, and he shoots the approach. With a ground controlled GCA, and the thing's got a 170 knot approach speed, and he's got like a 1,200 foot per minute rated descent, and the controller can't keep up, so he ends up going around on the first one, and he reaches his bingo fuel, and he starts to head to his bingo in Reno, right? Gets halfway there, and the controller, I don't know if he checked the weather back at Fallon, or if the controller he was with on the freak with said, "Hey, the weather looks like it's lifting." Turns around, goes
mm.
back. The golden rule: you never turn around once you're on that bingo profile. But as a guy who, it doesn't matter how good of an aviator you are. You start to believe that you can do things that other people can't do. It's sadly he flew into the ground. He ended up breaking out, got ground contact. The controller was behind, and he thought he had the runway in sight, and he ended up flying into those armament bunkers at the end of the runway there. no fireball because there's no fuel on the airplane. And fortunately, no armament in those things, in those bunkers. But very sad, very
He had
sad,
a
very, very talented.
yeah. He also had a blog too. I remember
Yes,
that
yeah.
I
Lex,
used to read.
Lex. Yep. It
What
was
was that?
before all this. This was before all this guys
Yeah,
started. Brilliant, very, very well written.
yeah.
Um, lovely wife, family, son. His son went on to be a Navy helicopter pilot.
So,
But yeah,
do you remember what the name of the blog was by any chance?
uh,
Because it was
was
Lex was his call sign, right?
yeah, Lex. I don't.
Yeah.
I'll find it though.
I was gonna say,
I've got articles and stuff that I printed out of
yeah,
him.
because like you said, it was before any of this and any podcasts and all. It was, but I would read it all the time as a youngster. It was fascinating to kind of get that
Yes.
peek in the world
Yeah.
from a guy
Yeah.
doing it. Yeah.
And then Terry, not the last guy, but probably the last one you guys would want to hear. But down in Key West, I lost a very close friend, Terry Mulkeen, was died in a midair
Mm.
overhead the field coming into the break. And what happened was it was a cleanup for a multi airplane engagement, and they're all coming back to the field. And what standard operating procedures for us at Key West was, we'd pick up guys that come in on our wing, and because we didn't want to have singles coming in and to where they had to be sequenced. It was just easier to come in, 2 or 3 plane. So this Hornet, a lieutenant commander who was going back for a Cat 2 to his squadron for his department head tour, starts heading back to NAS Key West, and 2 of the adversaries join on him. Carol LaFawn was one of them, and Terry Mulkeen was the other. Terry was in an F5, and Carol was in a A4. So the F5 joins on the left wing, the A4 joins on the right wing. They're coming into the break, and the pilot of the Hornet is a West Coast guy. And the West Coast at the time had a restriction on doing multi-airplane breaks other than an echelon. So, you couldn't do a diamond or a fingertip or whatever. And of course, he saw the Terry on his left wing, but he assumed either Terry had crossed over or it just, fell out of his scan. Gets to the field, the tower clears him to break, and the Hornet breaks into the F5 and impacts the nose of the airplane. The left horizontal stab of the Hornet hits the airplane, and the canopy comes off, and Carol's on the wing, sees the whole thing, says Terry just slumped forward. The airplane pitched down and went nose down right at the field. I mean, it couldn't have been more, visible. It's not like this happened out in the area and,
Yeah.
nobody, and he just didn't come back. And he was a tremendous, only the good die, right?
Yeah.
Only the good die in these things, but it's not true. But it seems that way. And of course, he died, and we all end up going to the service. And it's funny because we went to a number of them. When I was in VT3, we lost a guy, and of course, by the 5th or 6th one, my wife's always in tears, and I'm like, honey, don't worry, ain't gonna happen to me because I'm not that good, So
That's a little dark humor.
Yeah, well, I gotta love that dark
Yeah.
humor. It
Yeah.
just gets you through.
it gets me through. It's
For sure.
Yeah, you tend to hide it in humor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you said
It's
that
tough.
snort influenced you too. Do you have any snort stories that you would want to share
Snort
that
and,
would?
Pokey Molador. I think your dad would remember Pokey. Very again gifted aviator.
Okay.
We were in VF 142 together, and it was we always used to pride ourselves. Pokey would win the. He would get to fly Fozzie more than I did, but I enjoyed when I had the opportunity to fly with Fozzie. But we'd go out and snort, and Pokey and we'd do a 1v1v1, and of course we're doing things that we probably shouldn't have been doing with the airplane, like pulling circuit breakers and putting the big flaps down, and
Well, we learned about this a couple
We
episodes.
learned
Was it
about
Zone
this from
6,
Huck.
right? Is this Zone
Yeah.
6?
Oh yeah, he's like, I can go through all the cheats with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it'll all catch up with you. That's for sure. But it was a spectacular airplane. I was very fortunate, to have guys like Snort. And, it's funny when you take over and you're in front of the squadron, the JOs will take your persona on. And you got to make sure you're not writing, doing things that, not everybody in the squadron could do. You want to make sure that you're setting the best example. Not sure I always did that. I strove to do that. And if I saw one of the young guy, one of my JOs not doing it, I'd talk to him about it. Say, hey, you got to throttle back. You'll have that skill set at some point, but you don't yet. And, don't make bad decisions this early in your career, because, hopefully you'll have a long career. Somehow I made a lot of bad decisions, but I ended up okay.
I don't know. It sounded like you made a lot of good decisions too.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, I did.
Throttle back. That was one of my dad's favorite things to say to me as a kid, and I never realized that it was,
Yep.
an aviation term.
An aviation term, yeah.
And I would tell people that, and they'd be like, "What is she talking about?"
Yeah.
So what happened with the 1v1v1? Because I interrupted that.
Snort tracked Pokey, and Pokey tracked me, so I was leading the whole thing. So they were all behind me, right where I wanted. I love telling stories about the one thing you could count on in a Tomcat in an engagement. Everybody knows where you are. You're flying a big airplane if you're using it as a geo reference point. I'm anchored with the Tomcat. Yeah,
the only thing that everybody can see in the fight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Big fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But sadly Snort was lost. It's just amazing. I need to get out of this business here shortly. Of course, I'm close to my retirement age, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a devastating turn of events. I mean, I think every time I talked to my dad for weeks after that, he would tell me everything that he had heard, and he would the sadness was palpable in his voice, and it was because he was talking to everybody, and everybody was talking to everybody, trying to understand how Snort of all people, like Snort was untouchable. So
and you think about such a if in fact I think what happened was he had the gust lock was on, and you think about how does that happen to somebody with that kind of experience, and it's exactly who it happens to. It's because you just think you get in it and like it's a car, and it's not. You got to follow the checklist. Risk mitigation.
Yeah,
and they're there for a reason.
Yeah.
Well, we're just so glad to hear all the good stories that we've been able to hear about Snort, though, too. Just to, because that's keeping that legacy.
That's a legacy, absolutely.
And everybody, I feel like every time we do an episode, there's a name I write down that it's like I hadn't heard that guy, or need to hear more, and if we can circle back to some of those.
Yeah, like Pokey Molidor would be a great guy to contact. Last time he was with Southwest Airlines in Dallas. I have no idea. I think he's probably at the age where he had to retire from that. But
and Tongue, obviously.
Yeah,
talk to Tongue and you and get the real DL on some of these, I
think if you put us both side by side and let us go back and forth, it would be interesting.
Oh, it would be so cool.
Do like a panel or whatever.
Yeah,
that'd be really fun to have you back on like a focused Afghanistan.
Yep.
You need to get the perspective. You need to get the perspective of some of my JOs. John Sacamando.
Okay.
Who went on, was a Blue Angel and admiral in the reserves. Did very successful. It's it's interesting because a lot of the NFOs, well, a handful of them have gone on to command and add, great things beyond that. A number of them have all left the service. A couple of them have gone on to be airline pilots. A guy named Josh Rubin and who was a Rio in '84. Yeah. Have you been to any of the fighter flings or anything? Any of the events in Oceana? Oh, Beth, you're not there, right? Yeah, I'm sorry. But your dad?
But my dad keeps telling me, he's like, you need to be there. If you're really serious about this, you need to come down. And it just the timing hasn't worked out in this particular year, but I want to. I really think that would be a cool thing to do, especially the more I'm learning, I keep learning terms. I was saying the other day, I didn't know what MCON was. And then I found out for another reason, and I was like, "Oh, now I get it." And every time I sit down, I
try to explain that to somebody that you don't talk and they don't turn on the radar. How do you find the ship? How do you know? And you just know.
It's just so cool. I mean, there are just so many things that when you're, even for me, I think planes are cool. I don't know any of these technicalities, and I'm learning more and more, and it makes me just I definitely want to get deeper in that and all of this, which is what this is all about. I think that's why, Mitch, you and I make a good team. You're digging in on all those things that I am not, versed on, and then I ask the really hard human questions.
Yeah, and we all start crying. Thanks. Yeah, appreciate that.
I love that. I love it.
I think the one thing, and I know we're getting a little long, but I think the one thing that blows me away is they don't practice carrier landing stuff in the training command anymore. They don't go to the ship until they're in their RAG and their fleet aircraft. That just blows me away. And then this magic carpet, I guess, is really magic.
Yeah, it's. I mean,
hopefully fairly reliable, huh?
Yeah, the studies are there where it shows that there's very little difference at this point with this aircraft. But. Yeah,
it's crazy.
Way different than than back in the day.
So crazy.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. So.
Well, is there anything that you want to talk about that we haven't asked you, Chip? Because that's always a good last question.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very thankful to have my family, that has backed me. I've got 3 beautiful daughters, lots of grandkids. Very fortunate. Lived a very charmed life, So hopefully get another couple of years in the cockpit doing what I'm doing. The job I have now is like being in a squadron. It's a great equipment, great aircraft. What it is. I'm not sure I want to share with it on online only because they know what I did, but I don't think they want all our customers knowing what I did. So
fair enough.
It might be cool. It might just give you more credit.
Yeah,
street cred.
There are certain customers I'm sure would think it was okay, but I don't know. It's hard to believe that was almost 30 years ago. I mean, time goes by so quick.
Yeah.
And I'd go back in a minute and do it all again.
It's a good answer.
Well, this has been absolutely incredible. Mitch, you can, if you have more questions, I didn't mean to say that mine was the last. There could be others.
I don't have any. I'm just, Chip, thank you so much. This has been great. Love going back in time. And obviously when we get specific touch points from our lifetime of, like 9/11 and all that stuff, I think it's just because it's such a pivotal moment in our history.
Where were you at 9/11?
I was a senior in high school.
I was a middle schooler, and I still remember I came home. My dad was never home before me. And to this day, that was like one of the most emotional moments, except none of us cried. I walk in, he was sitting in front of the TV in his wheelchair, and none of us said anything. And by this point, we'd all seen everything going over and over. And he turned to me and he said, "Your life will never be the same." And he couldn't have been more right. I was in 8th grade, right? Yep. I had no idea, but Afghanistan became my life.
Yeah.
And he never, it was so prescient, and it was true just because our lives all changed. But, that was a crazy day.
Yeah. I remember the strike. My wife was our kids were swimmers, and she was at a bingo event. It was a money raising thing for the fundraiser for the swim team stuff. And there was one of the officers or one of the parents was a black shoe, a boat officer, and he was saying, my wife was all concerned, and he was assuring her that the Tomcats won't be involved. Don't worry about it. And thankfully, I had access to a phone, so when I got home that night, I was able to call her and just say simply, all Black Lions are safe on deck.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then I had to decompress, and there was a switching around the channel on the ship's TV. I was trying to find a movie, and there was Moulin Rouge. It was with Nicole Kidman.
Nicole Kidman is
perfect. And the thing, it was a perfect movie to decompress to, because it was like, it's like, have you seen it?
Mm-hmm.
It was like flashy, and
singing,
and it was sensory overload, but it helped me decompress. And so I watched the movie Moulin Rouge, and I was like, "You what? You what?"
Yeah.
I said, "Well, Nicole Kidman was in it."
Became your it's like your habit then. After every strike, you got to go back and watch Moulin Rouge.
Yeah.
Hey, that's like Puck and his Hallmark movies.
Yeah.
We have our things that we do.
Yeah, Puck's perfect for a Hallmark movie.
Yeah,
Dude, I was like, and Snort loved them, and I'm like, what? That is just crazy, and I love it. I love it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Like I said, every fighter guy's got a soft side, so it's
Yes, we do.
Just hide it in a box most of the time. That's all.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I want to echo Taco's comment. It has been so awesome sitting with you, Chip, and I can't wait to have you back when we all do our various digging to find out when Nate and Tong and you figure out who was around, and maybe Justin and some other folks, if I can find somebody who knows some ODA 595 people. We could have just a crazy talk up in here.
Right.
Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody for watching along. And we can't wait to see you next time.
Thank you,
everybody.
Take care.